Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. I'm super excited for today's episode. I believe this is episode 81, 82. I think it's 81. Somebody fact check me in the comments. Alexis, joining me today, we have Alexis. You can find her on Twitter as well. And please go ahead and give yourself an introduction.
So my name is Alexis. You can find me on Twitter at Alexis_investor. And I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from Oakland, California. I've been in the banking sector for 19 plus years. I started off as a bank teller at a savings and loans bank that was bought out by a company called Wachovia, which was really big on the East Coast. And then during the 2008-2009 banking crisis, Wachovia was then bought out by Wells Fargo. And being a teller and being in the banking industry, that was like the first exposure that I had to investing in the stock market. I actually started investing in the stock market at the age of 19 when I started as a bank teller for the bank. And I was very consistent with, investing in my 401k. Also, I was able to have access to financial advisors for free and invest for free because at that time there were these large commission fees that people had to pay. However, I would say that that's probably one of my biggest, a time of one of my biggest financial mistakes because I was so young. I didn't know what I was doing. No one really talked to me about investing, and I cashed out on those investments way too early. It wasn't until I entered into my, like when I turned 30, I got serious about investing. Really
Wait. You're
yes.
30? No, you're
No,
28.
I'm 38, but
No,
just
28.
38.
Are you sure?
I'm
We might have to check your birth certificate just to like double check. I don't know.
right. But yes, when I turned 30, I'm 38 now, but about 8 years ago, I got very serious about, the importance of investing, why it's important to hold on to those investments and really understand the purpose and why I was investing.
That's amazing. That's an amazing, great start and a great journey because, yeah, I was there too at a young age and made basically that same mistake of cashing out way too early. But you've kind of turned it around because honestly, at 30, you're still quite young. You still have like, you've got 20 years to 50, 30 years to 60. That's plenty
Yeah.
of years to continue stockpiling assets.
Yes. And when I became serious about it, no, when I become serious about something, I think I go overboard with it because I stopped shopping. I stopped
Yeah.
going out to eat as much. And it's just like I tried to make those sacrifices because I knew those lost years I needed to make up for it. So I'm like, I need to put every single thing in the market. And now that I'm older, I'm a little bit more lenient.
Yeah,
But
you still have
also
to live life and have some fun,
yeah, that's
right?
exactly. I had to learn that, like, okay, it's okay for you to treat yourself sometimes because you still have to live your life.
Sometimes it's okay to buy that $5 Starbucks or get the Big Mac or whatever, right?
Right. That is very true. And even with that, oh my goodness, there was a point where I was going to Starbucks every day. So I had to tell myself, okay, every time you go to Starbucks, however much money you spend at Starbucks, you have to match it with like fractional shares. And
Of
that's one of my,
Starbucks?
of Starbucks,
Nice. That's
SBUS.
awesome. I love that. Turn that cash register around. Everyone's heard me say it
Right.
before.
I always try to come up with creative ways to stay disciplined with investing in the market because you really don't need a whole lot of money like people may think.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe way back in the 90s and even early 2000s, you did need a little bit more money to kind of get in and get started, but these days you download a free app on your phone, you buy fractional shares like you mentioned, and you
Right.
can a dollar a day, a dollar a week, $5 a week,
Yeah.
$10 a week. Everyone can find $10 a week, right? Like, and if you
Yes.
can't, you're doing then you have other issues basically.
We have it so easy now these days with just being able to have access to even learning how to invest, like podcasts like yours, where you can get on and hear other people's journey and stories and be
Yeah.
inspired. And even the brokerages, they allow the fractional shares, and they've got rid of the commission fees and such. So it's such a great time for investing.
Yeah.
And then you have index funds that charge like the zero expense ratio. One of my favorite is because Fidelity, I'm a Fidelity girl. I love
Nice.
Fidelity. And so I invest in their total market index fund, which is like the whole entire US market, 3,000 different positions. And
Wow.
they have a 0% expense ratio.
Yeah, I've had some great guests in the past who are older like myself, and we remember the late '80s, early '90s, where you're calling a stockbroker, you have a roll of quarters, trying to find a payphone to call your stockbroker. You have your 16 dig. This is actually all Master P. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter at ObGuru. He had
Yes, yes,
a
P.
great podcast, a conversation with me. He's like going on about how he would carry around a roll of quarters and his 16-digit pin in his wallet to phone his stockbroker at 10 minutes to 4. And like
Wow. I couldn't
just yeah,
imagine.
it's so different now and so much better, obviously, so much better. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's so much easier now, right?
I can only imagine how many people that turned away
Oh
from
yeah, yeah,
invest.
like
Yeah.
so amazing. Great start, great introduction for yourself. Being so young too, at I believe you said 19, starting at the bank and getting into investing. So even if you did cash out early in your 20s, you still learned the ropes, right? You learned the ins and outs of investing basically.
Yes. Yes, I did. And when I started, I knew how important it was to just start. Like, because one of the things that I noticed is a lot of people can research and do all this research and get all this information and knowledge, but they don't execute. So
Right.
for me, it was important to execute. And even with me doing it on my own and not really, or feeling like I didn't know what I was doing because I had all this information, but still feeling like I didn't know what I was doing, the safest route for me at the time was just to go index funds. Start with index funds.
Yeah.
And I
I call
saw
that
how
just get on base. Just get
just
on
get on
base.
base.
You can get hit by a pitch, take your bases on balls, just get on base,
You
whatever it
can't go
takes.
wrong with it. Yeah. So that was just like my start. And I'm like, okay, this is going pretty good. And let me get off into some stocks now
Nice.
that I've got my feet wet.
So what does your portfolio look like now? You've mentioned index funds and Fidelity and Starbucks. So kind of overall, is there one sector that you're more heavily invested in than any other, or how does your
Yes.
portfolio look now?
I'm heavily invested in tech. However, index funds are my foundation. So S&P 500, that's where most of my money is. And then my second largest holding would be my total market, which is the total US stock market.
Right.
And then there's my Apple stocks, my Microsoft stocks, my Tesla, my Google, and then my dividends like Starbucks and the REIT O, which I
Yes.
enjoy that monthly dividend. So I was investing, and then I was introduced to the the dividend
Yeah.
Twitter. And when I was introduced to that, I knew, my portfolio was making money percentage wise, but I never really paid attention to my dividend income. So I ended up seeing where people on Twitter were keeping track of their dividend income, and I downloaded an app called Div Tracker. And so when I saw my dividend income, it just motivated me to like increase that. So I think this was in September of 2020 excuse me, 2022 is when I downloaded that app, and I had about $500 in annual dividend income projected.
Yeah.
And as of right now, I have about 1,300 in annual projected
That's
dividend.
good growth for just a year and a
Yeah,
half or so.
yeah. So I'm excited about that. And so now I make goals for myself. Okay, by the end of the year, I want to get that number to like 1,500 if I can.
Yeah.
and just grow that.
I know. I think we're all so motivated when we see those tweets from some of the accounts that are like, "Oh, I made 5,000 in dividends this month," right? Like not
Yeah.
year, this month, or seven
Right. I'm like,
grand or
what?
whatever. And you're like, "Wow, that's amazing." And if I made 5 or 7 grand in a month in dividends, I probably wouldn't be going to work every
No,
single day, Monday to
that
Friday,
would more than cover my expenses.
right?
I would just be working not to be bored, and I
Yeah,
probably wouldn't.
work optional. That's what they call it. Work optional.
Exactly.
Just work what when you want and do what you want to do for work, and much less pressure situation. It's not you're performing for another boss or company. You're just doing what you want to do.
Right, exactly. That's that's what financial freedom is about. Just
Yeah,
being
exactly.
free, having that freedom, and even if that's whatever that looks like if you don't want to work or work optional.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. What
So
else? Before I say what else, I kind of when you said tech stocks, I knew that Apple was gonna be right up there. So
yes.
are you like all in on Apple, like iPhones and iPads and EarPods and everything Apple, or not so much?
Yes, my phone is an iPhone. Actually, the PC I'm on right now is a MacBook Air. And yes, most of the products that I use are Apple. And so that was another thing when I first started investing outside of index funds is like, what products do I use the most? What do I spend the majority of my money on?
Yep.
Take a piece of my money and invest in that company and become a part owner through being
Turn
a
that
share.
cash register around.
Right. And then it's even nicer when that company pays you back in the form of a dividend.
Right. Even though Apple's yield is relatively low, but still.
Yeah. I'm like, they have all this money. I feel like they should, treat their shareholders a little bit more, give us a raise or something.
I think there's a lot of room for dividend growth with Apple.
Yeah, definitely for sure.
Now, here's a comparison I've made in the past, and let me know your thoughts on this. 15, 20 years ago, everyone had a BlackBerry. Today, no one has a BlackBerry. Do you see anything like that? I don't know the future. None of us do, but
Mhm.
is there any way that there's going to be something? And basically, it was iPhone that came out and kind of sunk Blackberries, right?
Yeah,
And so I'm just wondering, do you see that being a potential threat to Apple in the future?
it's a possibility. I believe not too long ago, Elon Musk was talking about a cell phone device, and he's very, very tech savvy and smart.
Right,
And there is even some information in regards to how him and Tim Cook they really didn't get along. I guess Tim Cook came to him and wanted to buy Tesla, and so I mean it is possible, but that's important for Apple to be very evolving and I think they're really good with that, with the
yeah,
involvement.
definitely. Over the years, Apple has always
Yeah,
been like innovative and coming in with new products. And
right.
what was it? Was it the original iPod that more or less like kind of saved the company when all of a sudden all music just went on iPods in
Yes,
2003 or
that
four?
that's what I'm saying. Like Apple has been so innovative. Like the whole idea of the iPad. Like we used to have to put CDs and cassettes in our cars, and then the Apple system became techno. It was just formed based on technology. Now we carry these
Right.
iPods and stuff, and now we don't need them because we have these Apple devices on our phone, which can be used just like
Like an
an
iPod, you have all your music on your phone now, so why do you need an iPod? Did they put themselves out of business right there, or
iPad. And so that's one of the things that I love about Apple is just how innovative they are.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. I do
Yeah,
have to mention that my truck has both a CD player and a cassette deck in it.
mine too. But I don't own any CDs. Well,
Nice.
my not cassette, but CD. It has a CD.
Yeah, well, that's how old my truck is. It still has the cassette deck.
So that's another thing. That's very good because you still have this truck. And is that a part of your wealth building plan? Just not. buying.
Oh,
And
definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
I realized years ago that I don't want to own a vehicle. I would never buy a vehicle unless it's at least 10 years old.
right. I mean, that's good, and that's something people don't talk about too. That's a wealth hack, not trading in your car every few years and not feeling like you need to have the latest car.
Yeah. I don't need
Yeah,
a Lexus or
right.
I don't, I like trucks. I'm a country boy and trucks are awesome, and I'm sure I've been looking at the F-150 Lightning, which is Ford's version of an electric pickup truck, and they're amazing looking vehicles. But the price tag on them, I'm just like, no, I'm not going
Right.
$80,000 in debt for a truck.
Right.
I'll
And when you
wait
think
10 or
about those,
15 years and buy one that's
yeah,
15 years old.
and you would think when you think about those car notes, and that's another thing I like to do, with large purchases, getting that investment calculator and seeing how much is this really going to cost me.
Yeah,
If I invested this money, it would $80,000 invested just compounding on its own without adding anything to it will double, triple over time.
yeah.
That car is going to
Depreciates
depreciate.
over time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned realty income, ticker symbol O. My viewers and listeners know I absolutely love REITs. And that is by far, I have to say, among all of the guests I've had on, all of the American guests I've had on here, and even probably a few Canadian guests I've had on here, uh, probably 98% of Americans own realty income.
Mhm.
Definitely a fan favorite among my viewers and listeners, and definitely in the Div Twit community as well. I guess just talk further into the idea and the strategy there. And I definitely know it, but I'll let you explain.
Yeah, because that REIT pays a monthly dividend. And so just having that in my portfolio, getting that monthly income is just so important. They talk a lot about recently, they're talking about a commercial real estate crash. And I just ignore that, especially when it comes to, oh, because they have tenants in there that are recession proof tenants, like grocery stores and your Walmarts and things like that. So
Right.
if there was a recession, that's not going to affect my investment. And if it goes down, I'm definitely going to purchase more.
Yeah.
Like
Buy the
right
dip.
now, yeah, right now I'm currently actually in the red on O, but my dividend makes up for that. And then it also right now is giving me the opportunity to dollar cost average and average down on my
Yeah.
uh, position. I
Yeah.
love O. It's a
Yeah,
great.
amazing, great points. And I've said it many times before too. That monthly dividend, all of my REITs, all because I own several REITs here in Canada, and they all pay a monthly dividend. And I get the math that whether it's 5 or 6% or whatever, that 5% paid quarterly is 5% monthly. 5% is 5%, but it's just something psychological of seeing that show up in your brokerage account on the 15th or 16th or whatever day it is every single month of, hey, there's just more money that just, I don't want to use the word magically appeared, but it really feels like it just magically appears there every month, right?
Right. And that's the cool thing about those dividends. When they're reinvested, they buy you more shares. So even
Yeah.
that monthly dividend that I'm getting, like I said, I'm in the red, but that's increasing my ownership in the position and then buying me more shares at that lower price.
Yeah. There's another thing I've said in the past too is it's the exact opposite of the vicious circle. It's like the happy circle, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh, you're gonna pay me, and then every month I just buy more shares, and then you pay me more, so I buy more shares, so you pay me more,
Right.
so I buy more shares. It's like such a happy cycle.
Yes.
And it just keeps
Yes.
going up every month, every month, every month. And
Right.
obviously, another incredible thing about O is, and I know their dividend increases are kind of incremental, but they raise their dividend. Is it every quarter they raise it?
Yes, and they've been doing that consecutively. I don't know for how long, but apparently it's been a very, very long time they've been consistent with raising that dividend. And I always tell people, like, these jobs, these corporations and these companies, they don't give us raises like that. But in the stock market, you have the opportunity to give yourself a raise by investing in some of these companies.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing I love more than getting a raise that I didn't ask for.
Right.
Didn't have to go to the boss and explain, "Hey, listen, I worked really hard this year. We helped meet company goals. I think I deserve a raise." And then the boss comes back and said, "Yeah, but this, and this." And no, these companies, they just say, "Hey, we're going to pay you more this year." And you're like, "Thank you."
Yes. And then you're building wealth while doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, it's a beautiful. I like to call it the happy circle, the happy
Yeah.
cycle, right? Like
Mhm.
the exact opposite of the vicious cycle.
Yes. That's when I started investing in, oh, I believe, I'm not sure how much they were paying, but right now I think it's 25 cents a share. So with 4 shares,
It's a dollar, yeah.
that's $1 a month. And just setting those milestones for me. Okay, I want to get $1 a month.
40
Okay,
shares, you got 10. 400 shares
right.
is
Yeah,
yeah,
let me increase this milestone and get, $5 a month.
yeah.
Just having I think it's so important to have a strategy too. Make investing fun, set some goals, set some milestones. That's something that I do with myself, and I keep track of everything and check off those goals. Hey, I just hit 100 shares in this position, or I just hit 20 shares in this position. Because
Nice.
one of the things about me is like, I hate like seeing one share of something in my portfolio. Like, no, you need to, okay, let's switch the focus to this position and increase the share count on that.
Right, yeah. No, you're obviously doing all the right things, like, paying yourself first, that every 2 weeks when you get that paycheck, making sure whatever the dollar amount is, whether it's 50, 100, 200, whatever it is that you've set aside for yourself, and then dollar cost averaging, whether it's up or down. Obviously, dollar cost averaging is great because you're like, "Oh, wow, I'm buying more of something I want for less." It's like, right? Like
Yes, exactly. And it works. I'm so excited that, from like I've been investing consistently, for 8 years now, but just last year, 2022, I just really, really, really went in because we just experienced that bear market.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to pay off. And we all didn't know when it was going to end. But just now, right now, we're seeing the market
Start to
start up a
rebound a
positive.
little. Is it a
Yeah,
bull trap? Maybe. We don't
right.
know,
We
but
don't know. Yeah. But it's just like, you just never know. So the important
and
thing is
even
just,
if it is a bull trap, we'll come out of it at the end of the day. Like,
yeah,
3, 4 years down the road, nobody's gonna remember if it was a bull trap in mid 2023. Really, no one, unless somebody's like
have to
really
stay
tracking
consistent.
the history of charts. Those are the only people who are even gonna notice.
Yeah. Consistency is key.
Yeah, consistency, discipline, patience. Those are to me, those are the 3 key, the 3 main key, characteristic or character traits, right? Like
Yes.
having the patience to know that you're in a long game,
Right.
having the discipline. No, I can't even remember my own saying.
And that's another thing that I think about it, when you mention patience. Like, this is not something that you're just going to expect this large return tomorrow. But for me, the way I look at it is I'm sending money to my future self so that my future
Yeah,
self will have,
that's an absolutely incredible
yeah,
way to look at it. Yeah,
yeah.
and being only 28 years old, you have like plenty of time.
That's so funny. 28.
No, you definitely look a lot younger
Younger than
than
I
you
am. I
claim to
get that
be.
so
Well,
much.
you look so much longer younger than you claim to be. We'll be checking your birth certificate after we're off
Okay.
air.
I get that so much.
Nice. That's good. Well, it's better than the other way. I get it too. I'm 50 years old and most people wouldn't guess that. So
No, not at all.
awesome. So Starbucks, tech stocks, Apple, index funds, and I guess sort of what else is sort of in your portfolio that you'd like to talk about?
What's in my portfolio? Um, ET. Have you heard of ET? It's a energy transfer.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I've
Obviously,
just
when you say AT, the first thing you go to is like the movie from the 1980s, and then I had to
right.
like think.
They have, I think, a 9% a little over 9% yield. And I started investing in that. And that's another thing with with this particular position. What I learned is you could use, I use it like as a savings. So it's, of course, it's an investment, so it's risky, but just the yield, like I'm making this 9% on the cash I put in. And so I do have, the way that I set things up is like with, I have my retirement accounts, which is my 401k. I have my Roth IRA. I have my traditional IRA, and I contribute to my IRAs depending on my tax strategy, for example. And then I have an individual brokerage. Those are my serious accounts where I have my serious investments. I'm only investing in my index funds, my Apple and my Microsoft, my Tesla. Um, Basically, the Fortune 500 tech companies that I invest
Right.
in. And then I have a little play portfolio
Nice.
where if I want to play around with something, and ET is just in that play portfolio, and it's making my money more money, so I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, always. Just a couple of quick points there. Most of my viewers and listeners know, especially the Americans, obviously, that 401ks and Roth are American investment vehicles, and we have similar things here in Canada, just with different names. And I'm sure other listeners from other countries in the world know um, the equals that they have in, say, the UK or whatever other country you may be listening from in the world. And you mentioned a 9% yield. So does that high yield scare you at all? Keep you up at night, or you're just like, since it's in your play portfolio, I'm just okay with it, and
Yeah,
let's just ride it out and see where it
but
goes.
yeah, it doesn't scare me because if I that's why I said it's like a play portfolio. So I'm not gonna put any money in there that I'm not okay with risking losing it.
Right.
And then it's also important to do your research and check financials on companies before you invest in them. One of the apps that I use as a resource to do that is Yahoo Finance and Webull. Webull is an investment app as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on yahoofinance.ca, which is the Canadian version of
Hmm.
Yahoo Finance. I'm on it every single day, every single day of the week.
Yes, me too. And CNBC, and I have those alerts set up.
Awesome. I'm kind of curious because you mentioned Starbucks, and obviously that's sort of consumer staples slash consumer,
Yeah.
more consumer discretionary. You don't have to buy Starbucks every day. I'm just kind of wondering, anything else, in that sector, like the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, Costco's, Walmart's.
Oh my goodness, I forgot to mention another holding I'm building is, and I'm pretty sure you see this all over Twitter, SCHD.
Oh yeah.
So you mentioned Pepsi. I know Pepsi is one of the holdings in there. And so I just started building that position because it's a great dividend. Um, but consumer staples, I've noticed some of those that you just named in that position.
Right.
So instead of having those individual stocks, I just uh,
Roll them all into that
in
one.
that one position.
Yeah, that's incredible. Do you follow Craig on Twitter? His Twitter handle is at SEHDStan.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Oh, you should. He's fun. His name's Craig. He's actually a Canadian, but he lives in Florida. And
Okay.
yeah, SEHD Stan, as in like the Eminem Stan
Yes,
song.
I do follow him. Yes, I do. I
Yeah.
do follow him. Yes. Yes, every day I can count on him to give us some SCHD updates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he's great. He's been on the podcast a couple times, and just fun to talk to. And yeah, he's definitely all in on SEHD. He does obviously hold other positions as well. I'm
Yeah,
sure that's got to be his largest position, because he just keeps trying to get like 1,000 more shares every time I talk to him.
right. That is a position that I just started building up in one of my IRA accounts. And so my direct deposits lately have been going to that,
Right.
and it pays a nice dividend.
Yeah. So, would you believe I don't own a single U.S. Position or holding? and SEHD is on the absolute very top of my watch list. I've thought about it. Like I've thought, well, Coca-Cola and Realty Income were the other two that were sort of the top three in my watch list
Mhm.
of what would I invest in first if I were to start investing into US companies. And the only reason, well, not the only reason, but the biggest reason I don't right now is the exchange rate. The Canadian dollar is just so low versus the US dollar. I would lose so much on the exchange. And so, yeah, I'm really just looking at SEHD as well. Instead of buying Coca-Cola individually, I'm pretty sure it's in SEHD, and you get Pepsi and Home Depot, and I think
Right.
McDonald's, and I don't know I don't know how many companies are in SEHD, whether it's 20, 50, 100, but like it seems every single company in that ETF basket is just a extremely strong company to hold. So why wouldn't you just get a little piece of them all in one, right?
Right. And that's important for me because, like, I don't want to have all these individual stocks in my portfolio because then I have to keep up with all these different companies.
Right.
So for me, being sort of a set it and forget it type investor, it's easier for me to just own like an ETF and index funds.
Let the money manager take care of that, and you can go on with your life, right?
Right.
I do also have to ask you, because you said you've been in the banking industry in the US for apparently nearly 20 years. I'm not sure how the math works there. Are you familiar with the Canadian banks as well, and how well the Canadian banks have done over the history of their lifetimes?
I'm not familiar with the Canadian banks. However, I currently work for a bank called Bank of the West, and um, it is a bank that's really dominant on the West Coast and Midwest of America. And we were just recently bought out by BMO, which is
Oh,
a strong Canadian bank.
yeah.
And so I'm excited about the transition. I'm actually been in training with them and just scrolling through their website to see some of the benefits, and I ran into a employee. I can't think. It's called ESPP, Employee Stock Purchase Plan. That's what it
Oh,
is.
wow.
So they let you purchase shares of their company, and because you're an employee, they give you 10% off of the market price. So you're automatically buying shares of the bank at a 10% discount, which gives you automatic growth.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about
Take
that.
advantage of that.
Yeah,
Not financial advice, but take
right,
advantage of that.
right. I mean, that's an automatic win. And I saw that because they do have their 401k, but then they also have this ESPP. And when I saw that, I was like, that's so exciting. Not only that, but BMO
Wow.
pays a dividend, and I heard it pays a really good dividend. And they've been paying a dividend for, is it 200 years or 100 years, I believe?
1829, so coming up on 200 years.
Wow. And so that's one of the things I'm excited about working for this company.
Yeah, yeah.
But other than that, I'm not familiar with any other Canadian banks.
No, but that's exciting that you're learning about BMO and 1829. Just for a side note, I know in the US they don't teach a lot of Canadian history, if any. Just for context, Canada didn't even become a country until 1867.
Wow, so BMO existed before Canada
Before
became.
Canada was even a country, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and same with Bank of Nova Scotia. They've been paying a dividend since 1833, I think, and then I'd have to go back and check the others, but yeah, the big 5 have all been paying dividends for now over 150 years.
Now, are you familiar with any of the other Canadian banks that has a presence in the United States other than BMO?
Well, yeah, TD, obviously Toronto Dominion, they have a big presence. I always reference Boston, well, it's a new arena now, but Boston Gardens is now called TD Ameritrade Gardens or
Okay.
TD Ameritrade Arena. So, yeah, TD has a big presence in the US. Um, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, used to have a larger presence in the US because I think they partnered with PNC, but I think now all the branches have gone back to PNC, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure on that. Someone would have to fact check me in the comments, please. Um, Bank of Nova Scotia has been more focused on Latin and like Central and South America. So your Nicaragua's, Honduras's, and those countries in Central America, and then further south into South America, Venezuela, Brazil, etc. um, and then the other banks, I'd really have to kind of take a deeper dive to see who has what where. To be honest,
Nice. They told us that with this merger with BMO and Bank of the West, it puts BMO as the eighth largest bank in the United States. That's
yeah,
huge.
that's believable.
Yeah.
That's believable. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to somebody fact check me on this one too, because I know RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, is the biggest bank in Canada, and it might
Oh,
even be the biggest company in Canada, all around.
oh
And
wow.
and BMO might be the second biggest bank in Canada. So yeah, and it's amazing when you see their quarterly reports, or you don't even have to look at the reports because it's reported on like the business news on the radio once every quarter when it's like, oh, the this bank, like whether it's BMO or RBC or whichever bank, is reporting a quarterly profit of $1.2 billion, and you're just like,
Oh,
what company makes 1.2 billion in a quarter?
word. Right.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think that's amazing news for you and very positive. Like, I would love to be able to buy shares of any of the Canadian banks for a 10% discount. That's just a great deal, right?
Yes, it is. I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Cool. What else do we have to talk about?
Let's see. We talked about, so with the Canadian investments, you guys have something called index, you guys have index funds?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's all really more or less the same, just with different names.
got it.
So like you have the Toronto, or you have the New York Stock Exchange, and we have the Toronto Stock Exchange, and obviously on the TSX, everything is in Canadian dollars. Um, there are a lot of Canadian companies that trade both on both the TSX and New York. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like the Canadian banks, like Bell Canada. Bell Canada is one of our biggest our actually I think it is our biggest telecom provider, and you know how over the years telecom has also become uh, media and entertainment as well. So they own TV stations and radio stations as well, and obviously mobility like cell phones and whatnot. So yeah, that like there's tons of Canadian companies on in the U.S. market on the New York Stock Exchange that yeah, you know, you look at them, they're strong companies as well. So
That's good. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm like an kind of like a boring investor, but I think
that
boring
that's the
is
best
good.
kind.
It's the
That's the
best
best
kind
kind, right?
because it's like building it nice, slow, and steady and
Slow
safe.
and steady wins the race, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I just my index funds are just like I said, they're the foundation of my portfolio.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think I love your story. The fact that you started out so young, you made some mistakes, you learned from those mistakes, you went right back in it at still a very young age, to be honest. And you know, now you're on that path, learning from those mistakes, knowing what you know now, knowing to keep at it. And yeah, you're gonna be in a great position in another 10 or 15 years when you are thinking about whether it's you know fire financial independence, retire early, or slowing down and becoming just more work optional. You know, you're on an incredibly great path.
Thank you. I'm excited. I said for the next, 10 years, I want to just go all in as well because I that's one of the things that I want to reward myself with is just a great retirement. Being
Yeah,
able to just travel and do what I want to do on my own terms.
yeah, and not have to worry so much, right? Like it's so unfortunate when people get to 55, 60, 65, and they start to wonder what am I going to do now, right? And it's not a great position to be in. So yeah, you definitely want to set yourself up for, like you say, being able to thank your future self, or your
Yeah,
future self thanking you now.
right. That you know you made those right decisions, you followed through and step made those steps.
Cool. Oh, before we sign off, I guess anything, any shout outs or any last words of wisdom, anything that you would advise, not financial advice, but anything you would say to maybe someone younger or someone starting out, or
Yes, absolutely. I would just say if you don't know, like I said earlier, if you don't know what you're doing, index funds are
yeah,
a very good foundation and way to start. Don't sit on your knowledge, execute. Don't just sit still on your knowledge
just get
and
on base.
just get on base. Exactly. And you can find me on Twitter at Alexis underscore investor, on YouTube, the Proverbs 31 Investor, and on Instagram, the Proverbs 31 Investors.
I will have those links in the description below.
And thank you so much, Dave, for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I've truly enjoyed this. We've had a blast. It's been a lot of fun talking with you. It's been an incredible conversation, and I can hardly wait to hopefully have you on a live stream. Like I mentioned in the DM, I'd love to have you and Ms. Novi and Tiff on a live stream together. I think that would be incredible fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. And so with that, we're going to sign off. If you're still here 40 some minutes later, please be sure to subscribe.